Vanessa, I wanted to say thank you so much for being here. It is such an honor.
Thank you for having me.
And for anyone who doesn't know Vanessa so well yet, she is the executive director of the Pain Psychology Center. And she is a therapist, so she supports patients who are recovering from chronic symptoms using neuroplastic approaches. She's also the co author of the Pain Reprocessing Therapy Workbook. And importantly, for this session, she has her own experience with chronic symptoms, that lived experience that we like to share at these sessions. So thank you for being willing to share your story. And if it's okay with you, Vanessa, we'll go ahead and dive in.
Absolutely. I would encourage everyone to get comfortable. I just realized my pants are too tight, so I'm unbuttoning them. So if anybody needs to unbutton their pants or get comfortable, please do so. Because I needed that. I showed up with my hair down, tight pants. I'm like, what am I doing?
Oh my goodness, I would Vanessa always likes to say, come as you are for these sessions.
Mhm.
We try to embody that, and you are embodying that right now for us. So thank you. All right, so let's dive in. So, as I was saying, you have a very personal connection to chronic symptoms, having experienced them in your life, and prior to becoming such an expert in the pain science and in the neuroplastic approach. So, I would love for you to just tell us all a little about that experience, of the chronic symptoms that you faced in your life.
Yeah, gosh, my story is so long, so I will make it as succinct and coherent as possible. I started having chronic symptoms around the time of age 11. It was kind of seen as almost like a rite of passage in my family, having migraines. Most of the women in my family have some sort of migraine or headache ongoing condition, and I remember when I told my grandmother what I was feeling and that I felt like throwing up and that my head really hurt and I couldn't see. And she was like, "Oh, welcome to the world of having a migraine. Now it's your turn." And I just kind of thought that it was my turn in a way. I just normalized it almost. At first, it started as menstrual migraines, but then probably in high school, it became outside of menstruation. It became a couple of times a month and it started getting worse. It started with just a slow, dull, yet sharp. If you have migraines, you know what I'm talking about, like dull yet sharp pain in my right eyeball that would start to lead to getting sick, having vertigo, feeling like I was walking on a foam mattress. And it felt like just the sound of the world was like a wah, 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 wah kind of sound all the time. And I figured out a way to deal with it, close the curtains, like don't wear heavy earrings or glasses on my nose because that would make it worse. And I would have certain tinctures and kind of lotions and potions and things that would help me feel safer even in the midst of extreme pain. And then I started developing some pretty significant pelvic floor pain symptoms. By the end of my pelvic floor pain recovery, I had been on 13 different kinds of birth control. So my body had been through a lot in a short amount of time. On top of that, I'd also been utilizing birth control and migraine medication to try to see if we can bring down the migraines with the birth control because it was said to be hormonal. And then I was given migraine medication to try to mitigate the intensity of the migraines. So it was just a lot going on. And then eventually I started developing chronic hives. I was diagnosed with something called aquagenic urticaria, which I later learned is neuroplastic. Even though, I get triggered by heat or stress and I break out. And I still do to this day. I'm always happy to answer questions about how I feel about that. But so then I started developing hives. I had this pelvic floor pain that was getting worse. I was on different kinds of birth control every year. I had migraines all the time that were getting slowly worse and getting longer. So I would have about 2 or 3 migraines a month, and they would last about 3 or 5 days each. And then when grad school hit, it was like the stress was through the roof. So I started having really severe IBS symptoms that I would be sitting in a grad school class and I would feel my migraine coming on. And then because I felt trapped in a room with other people breathing and overhead lighting, I would start to feel like I was breaking out in hives. And then that started to make me feel like I was about to poop my pants, quite literally. And then I was like, oh my God, oh my God. And then I'd break out in more. And then the room would get dizzier, but then I would stay because I didn't want to be the person that walked up in a panic, right? So just like this constant implosion in my body. And so by the time that I found this work, I had deferred on a PhD program. I decided not to go because I was feeling awful. And I found this work professionally first, not personally. I thought I was special. We all think we're special. You're not. You're special as a human being. You're not special in your symptoms, unfortunately. Um, and once I started seeing myself in a lot of my own clients, I was like, damn it. I think that this is for me. And then it started working as I started working it. So here we are.
Wow,
Mhm,
Vanessa. So, I mean,
mhm,
so many symptoms and
mhm.
such a young age. So, I mean, I guess we can all only really imagine just how scary and confusing and frustrating that was, and to kind of go on the merry-go-round of visiting doctors and trying different treatments like different birth controls. Just such just a frustrating and exhausting experience for you. And obviously at that time, through that journey before you knew about the pain science. I can only really imagine how you tried to make sense of those symptoms and why you seem to have so many different pains and symptoms in your body. What was your understanding at the time, maybe as like a young adult before you became aware of the pain science?
You know, I think I just normalized it because my childhood was pretty bad. I have a 10 out of 10 on the ACEs score. I lived in a home with a lot of domestic violence and drug use, and we were eventually removed from the home. And I was in the foster care system for a while. And so I think I just normalized chaos. I think in my mind, I thought that this was how life goes, that it's bad and it's scary and stressful. And I thought that it was normal to kind of live this way. Now, I knew through my friends that there was something not normal about my life, but I didn't have words to describe it. I also have a family that, love them, but I have a family that is of the nature of like, what do you mean? Nothing's wrong. We're fine. You had presents on your birthday. What do you mean something is wrong? And it messed with you a little bit. It made me think like maybe I'm just being dramatic and I was told that. I was always told I am very sensitive, too sensitive, being dramatic and so it kind of made me feel like maybe that's what I feel in my body. So I don't want to tell people that I'm not feeling good because I always get told I'm being too sensitive or dramatic or, oh, it's normal. So I think I just thought it was normal until I could no longer function. I'm really, really skilled. I have a PhD in powering through. I'm really skilled in powering through. And I tell clients all the time, like just because I can power through and you shut down, it doesn't mean that mine is better. I know it looks nice and pretty because I'm doing a million things and you're like, wow, she's like doing all this stuff and I've been bedridden for there's no it's different forms of states of arousal. Mine is a hyper arousal state. Others experience a hypo arousal state. And what I realized eventually is I could no longer be in a state of hyper arousal. Like my body and my brain was starting to shut down. And that was when my family, my grandfather specifically told me after graduation from my master's in social work that he said, you cannot start a PhD like this. You need to take a break and figure out what you really want. And I didn't feel better when I deferred. I got worse because I've never sat down and just did nothing. That was scary because I've never sat in my own like internal chaos. I've always gone a million miles a minute because I've normalized it.
Gosh, I mean, that really, really resonates with me, Vanessa. And it's something that I think about for myself because my symptoms were so severe and I'm a pusher through type person, just carry on. And I feel like I would have always ignored the whispers of the body, like the whispers of overwhelm, of stress, just ignore and push through until one day, screaming pain that just stopped me in my tracks because that's what would get my attention. That's how I understand the severity of those symptoms. It was really forcing me to stop and take a look at things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, can you tell us a little bit more about how you initially came across pain neuroscience, the science of neuroplasticity, and when you did come across that, how that science really shifted your understanding of your symptoms from thinking like this is just normal, this is, this is just my life, this is just my body, how you then came to view your symptoms and what was causing them and what was making them persist.
Yeah, it's actually a really funny story. Like I said, I deferred. I was going into a PhD for mindfulness-based relapse prevention. It's very similar to PRT. It's very similar to therapy in general. So if you're ever interested in that rabbit hole, I would suggest looking into it. Um, but I was specializing in this work. And so I was a little familiar already with how to ride these intense waves. In mindfulness based relapse prevention, folks that are navigating their recovery from addictive behaviors or substances, instead of feeling like they have to default to a set of rules of how to navigate their addiction, it's actually more about riding the wave of that feeling of wanting to engage in their addictive behavior or substance. What does it feel like in your body to feel like you want to do that thing? And can we get to know it a little bit before we're like, oh, I'm an addict, I can't be trusted, let me go to my rules. Right. So I was already kind of familiar with the modality in a way. And so I was stuck in my own life. I had deferred on this program. I was nannying, which is, let me say, is like the honor of my life. That child is my best friend. I always tell him it's this child, my job, and then my husband, and then, oh no, my dog goes up there too. So but anyways, it was an honor to be a nanny for this little one his whole life. But you know, in our type A brain, I was like, this is not enough. I have a master's degree and I'm a nanny. And it was because I took a break, right? And so in this time, I was having a really hard time with migraines and pelvic floor pain and breaking out and everything. Really, me and olive oil had a really hard relationship because of IBS stuff. So I was just all over the place. And eventually, one of my mentors, who used to be my supervisor at my practicum, she mentioned a conference that she went to that somebody named Alan Gordon had spoken at. And she starts mentioning the modality to me. And she says, oh, the Pain Psychology Center is hiring. I was like, cool, I'll apply. And she's like, well, no, I'm saying like you should check it out. And I'm like, yeah. Let me just look into this job opening. And so I applied, and I had an interview with both Alan Gordon and Christy Weepy. Christy is the host of Like Mind, Like Body podcast on Curable. And I had an interview with them, and I used the story of, when I had a nanny's worst nightmare incident with my nanny kid as an example to the question of how do you help people feel safe. And I told Alan and Christy that, you know, I grew up with my brother having epilepsy. And so you have to stay really calm in order to help someone's brain not like unconsciously freak out as they're like going into the state where they can still hear you, you know. And I told him that when I was a nanny, we had a nanny's worst nightmare where he put his arm on accident through a single pane window and ended up with 76 stitches. And in order to make sure this little baby like didn't have worst case scenario, I had to stay really calm and reassure him that we were going to be okay. And I was going to let him play on my phone and like give him all this like fun stuff to hold on to. And he made it through. And his parents just kept saying like, I don't know how you did that. I wouldn't have been able to. And I kept thinking like there's something to this skill that I have because I knew I had it. I knew I can stay really calm. I don't know if I can like protect anyone from zombies, but I can stay really calm when the apocalypse is happening so that we like make a game plan and get out of there safely. And I knew that I was good at that. And so I used that in my interview and I got the job. And it was really cool to be like, whoa, okay, so this is a different trajectory. And pain reprocessing therapy also sounded like, again, mindfulness-based relapse prevention. And I was like, I know how to do this. I'm familiar with this kind of work. And they just threw me in, full caseload right away. And that's when I started to both learn a lot about myself, but have a really hard time. I will never forget having a session with a client who was describing migraine symptoms that were similar to mine, and their life experiences were very similar to mine. And they started describing them in detail. And as they started describing these experiences, their symptoms started worsening. And they started kind of going into a bit of a panic attack. And I started really struggling as they were talking. My migraine symptoms slowly creeped in. It was like somebody took my table lamp and put it right in front. And so I could no longer see my client. and my mouth started watering, and the room started shaking, and my chair started feeling it was like molding into foam. And I was trying to somatic track and somatic track and somatic track. And my client was panicking. And so I sent Alan a text and I just said, can I talk to you after my session? And we hopped on the phone and I just started crying. And I said, I am the worst therapist ever. I don't think I supported this person at all. And I am like 10 out of 10 right now. And he helped me navigate through my symptoms in such a unique way where I was so focused on like, I'm going to have to cancel the rest of my week. And Alan said, well, what were you going to do after the session? And I was like, how does that matter? Like, you're not hearing me. Like, I have to cancel everything. And he said, but what were you going to do after? Like, what was your plan after your day? I said, I was going to go hiking and I can't now. He said, why can't you? I said, because I'm going to throw up and I feel dizzy. He's like, well, are you going alone? I'm like, no, I'm going with my significant other. He's like, oh, well, then if you get dizzy, you'll have somebody there. And I was like, are you not listening to me? Like, I can't. And he's like, and if you get sick on the hiking trail, it sounds like you're just going to throw up out in the middle of nowhere. So you don't have to like deal with like a gross toilet and like blah, blah, blah. And I was kind of frustrated, but I eventually understood him saying like, you have to go on the hike. You've been learning stuff about your symptoms. You've been learning stuff about your body. At some point, like, we have to give ourselves permission to do that uncomfortable thing, even when your brain is trying to give you every single message that says not to. And I went on the hike. And at some point, I don't know when the nausea went away. I still had a slow thud of a headache, but not a migraine. It didn't last 5 days. It lasted maybe the next morning. I didn't cancel my week. And it was something in me that was like, oh no, I get it now. Dang it. Like this is all me. And it took me a while to like really start to see all of my symptoms in the pain reprocessing therapy realm. The last one that I had a hard time with was the chronic hives, but that was another aha moment that I was able to kind of hang on to and keep kind of reiterating to my brain over and over again. Like, if we're breaking out, we're breaking out. There's nothing that you can do to stop this wave once it's already formed. You can just ride it. And that's what I've done for myself. So I just saw that in my clients' stories.
Wow, that's an amazing personal story. And I love what you said about how you speak to a child and likening that to how you speak to your symptoms. Because when I talk to my children when they're scared and I calm them down and use a particular voice, and that's exactly how I used to speak to myself when I was having symptoms as well. Just such a beautiful way to think about it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like as you are learning more about the pain science, becoming an expert in it and treating patients using it, you're connecting all the dots yourself, I imagine, between symptoms, between life experiences, emotions, stress, even ways of being in the world. Could you talk a little bit more about that, about the dots that you connected for yourself as you were learning about the science and treating patients with it?
Mm-hmm. As many of us, I'm sure, can say, we are so good at giving advice and not taking it. I am so good at that. That's another thing I have a PhD in. I have a PhD in giving amazing advice and not taking it. And then my spouse will try to remind me, like, remember what you tell your clients. I'm like, shut up. Nobody asked you. So, I'm very good at giving advice and not taking it. But what I started to realize is, there's something about talking about this stuff out loud. So I tell my clients all the time, I'm like, when you need to reassure yourself and tell yourself a message of safety, I want you to start saying it out loud. Like, talk to yourself. Do it. Talk to yourself all the time, in the shower, in the car, in the grocery store. Like, I don't care. Start talking to yourself. Mute yourself in the middle of a meeting and talk. And I had a client one time say, I did it in the middle of a meeting and I muted myself and I started talking and they go, oh, you're muted. And they unmuted and they went, oh, I forgot what I was supposed to say. Like, but they were really trying to reassure themselves. Like, it was something about talking about it out loud where my brain would say these words and go, hey, like, your brain is engaging in predictive coding and oh my God, that's me. I would do that all the time. I'm like talking about the work. I'm like, oh man, I see it. I see it now. So I really feel like being a provider in this work is what helped me. People ask me all the time, like, what did you do? And what exercise did you use? I talk about this work all day, every day, sometimes 6 days a week. And it was that repetition that helped me. Now, I'm not recommending that everybody go and be a therapist or a coach. Like that's not, that's not everybody's journey, but like talking about this stuff out loud, like annoying yourself. I want to feel annoyed when I feel a symptom. I'm like, I know what this is and I don't want to say it because I hate it, that it's always my nervous system. Like I want to annoy myself with how much I apply this work to so many different kinds of things that I feel in my body, physical symptoms, emotions, thoughts, all of it. And so I really think that just being able to talk about it with other people helped me connect the dots, helping people connect the dots in their life and saying, like for some folks, I have clients that really benefit from the kind of philosophical meaning behind their pain. I have migraines because I am constantly like, overthinking, or I get dizzy because I'm constantly overthinking, or I constantly feel like I'm not doing enough, or I have back pain because I have a hard time standing up for myself. I have clients that love to go that philosophical route. And it was always it's always still is, because I have a lot of clients, way too many clients, and I don't think that'll ever stop, but it's okay. I would, when people want to get philosophical about their pain meaning, I enjoy so much like connecting those kinds of dots for folks. And then when I have people that don't really like the philosophical stuff, they're just like, just give me the straight answer. Like, give me the neuroscience. Tell me what my brain is doing. And then I would explain that, and that connects dots for me. And so I would have this like beautiful kind of mesh of all different ways of explaining this for people that would really help me understand my own experience. And I will tell you that I really think that one of the biggest things that helped me was giving myself permission to be an imperfect human in my sessions with my clients and say, I had a really hard day last week, and let me tell you what I did and what happened. And I've had clients say like, oh my gosh, like, well, if you're having a hard day, like, does that mean this is going to be forever for me? I'm like, yeah, for one, in a way, yeah, because you have a body, but it doesn't have to be the same danger that you're experiencing now. I have symptoms, I'm sure, here and there, but I cannot tell you the last time that my brain went, oh, my symptoms are coming back. I don't even know when the last time that happened was. I had a few migraines last year. But I don't think I ever thought of them as a symptom. I just was like, oh, crap, I feel like poo today, and I just need to take her easy and, have dinner in bed and things like that. And then was in and out of it in the next evening or the next morning, So I think just having so many different ways of being able to explain this stuff to others, being honest and being real, and not trying to act like I had my shit together, sorry for lack of a better word, all the time. And also just saying all this stuff out loud, right? And again, it's why I encourage my clients to say things out loud.
Wow, incredible. So the more and more you explain this to other people, I guess you're reassuring your brain on a deeper and deeper level.
Mm-hmm.
And that, now you don't have chronic, like debilitating, relentless symptoms. Like you said, your mind body connected forever, all humans, and, things will show up in the body, but you have an entirely different relationship to them now and an entirely different response. So
Mm-hmm.
just thinking a little bit about that, you run the Pain Psychology Center, you're a therapist, so you hold space for people every day, people who are healing. I'm just aware like that's so much. So how do you continue to look after your well-being, look after your nervous system as somebody who has been through this neuroplastic symptom journey and is now on the other side, but how do you continue to look after yourself?
First and foremost, like unapologetically. I like, that's why I have to say these things out loud. I have to say like, my pants are too tight, and unbutton them, because it helps my brain feel better, like I have to say out loud, like, I don't know why I wear my hair down. I'm freaking hot. Like, let me put it up. It's little things like that, like unapologetically taking care of myself. I have learned from my friends about how to take care of myself. What's so interesting is, as you just asked me that, a hummingbird showed up on the other side of this tree here, and hummingbird is my mom's native bird. So I just thought that was kind of funny that as we start talking, taking care of yourself, a hummingbird showed up. So I just had to say that out loud. Yeah, it's still here. Um, but again, unapologetically, and I have friends and my spouse that teach me like how to like speak up for yourself in such a direct way and to not apologize for it, to the point where I've had to realize like I need to stop apologizing for a lot of things constantly. I need to stop saying I'm sorry. I may sound like a jerk, but sometimes even in the grocery store, if somebody's run into me, I've had to practice saying, excuse you, instead of I'm sorry. And it feels real nice, especially if I'm in a mood. Just being able to kind of live life unapologetically without over apologizing for everything, that did something to my nervous system over time, and really leaning into that. Boundaries. I know that
Mhm.
we're thinking like, oh, what meditation exercise do you use? I don't enjoy meditating with audios. I'll tell you why. My meditation is like making a coffee or watching the hummingbird or petting my dog. That's how I meditate. I love picking a good playlist and just like fixing my eyebrows and like I don't know, things like that are meditative to me. But so really just like again back to boundaries and just like doing things that are like more non-traditional kinds of self-care. Folding warm laundry, watching ASMR videos, things like that, watering my plants. And again, these boundaries were so big because my life, what I realized in this work, and this is the painful part of a lot of my clients' experience, is we will be working together for a while. And I say this with love. My clients know this. I say this with love. They will want me to help them get better at meditation. And I can do that for a little bit. But then we need to start looking at how the relationships with work, their surroundings, people in their lives do not set them up to feel regulated. Basically, it's not you doing it to you. There's people and things around you that are not helping you access self regulation. And we need to prioritize those boundaries. And guess what? It's going to suck because that means you're going to get real uncomfortable for a little bit by telling people no, no longer saying sorry, prioritizing yourself in such a unique way that it makes all these little exercises and the workbook actually feel a lot more accessible because you're prioritizing yourself in a new way. And I'm sure people hear that and they're like, oh my God, like it sounds so daunting to do all of that. But no is a full sentence, and saying it only creates physical sensation. That's it. If somebody gets mad at you, it's a physical sensation if you don't like it. If you feel uncomfortable with, what people think about you, it's a thought with a physical sensation and you're going around and around. Everything all comes back to a physical sensation. And we can meditate and somatic track, but unless we start prioritizing ourselves in a new way, we're going to have a really hard time putting a band-aid over what's really going on. And so that's what I did. I started realizing like I had to have better boundaries. Now, I don't know if I have the best boundaries with work, but it's fulfilling. So there's a little bit of a push pull there. It's very fulfilling and I enjoy it so much. So I do a lot of things. Yes. But I have said no to people that I have constantly said yes to. I
Mm.
have lost relationships, friendships, family relationships that weren't meant to be there. And it was really hard for a while. And then it got easier.
Mm.
And I started being honest about how I show up. And those things helped give me kind of the momentum to put my energy towards things that I really want to do, which is stuff like this.
Mm. Oh, it's fascinating. And I think on this journey, we learn to live in such a different way, much more mindfully, more self-compassionately. So it's not just about changing the relationship with the symptoms, it's about changing the relationship with ourselves and our lives, which I guess is what PRT is all about. So I want to come on to your presentation now and make sure that you have plenty of time to go through that with
Yes.
people. But thank you so much for sharing your story. It's so powerful to hear about people's personal experiences and how the work has affected them. And I am so happy for you that you are beyond those chronic symptoms. And thank you
Thank you.
for sharing all about that with us today. So I'll hand over to you more fully now
Yeah.
if you'd like to share your slides. Thank you so much.
I sure will. So, what I want to go over with you all today is just pain reprocessing therapy in general, but some of my few favorite topics within the work that I think are really important to emphasize. So, pain reprocessing therapy is basically an evidence-based treatment for chronic pain and other sensory symptoms. It contains a set of methods that are aimed at teaching the brain to interpret and react to bodily signals correctly. So ultimately interrupting the pattern of chronic pain and other sensory symptoms. One of the most important things to say here is that this does not mean that symptoms are, kind of like a facade coming from the brain or exaggerated or imagined. The pain that somebody feels is very, 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 very real. The fatigue is real. The symptoms are real. All of it is real. What this approach offers is a different explanation for why symptoms can persist, intensify, spread, feel stuck, even when there is not ongoing damage to explain the full picture. So PRT helps people move out of danger-based relationship with their symptoms and into a safer, more accurate, more flexible relationship with their bodies. So here's a little information on the study that was done, I think 2021. I don't know, the pandemic was really a blur. But so basically in 2021, there was a randomized controlled trial that was published in JAMA Psychiatry. And this was led by Yoni Ashar, Alan Gordon, Howard Schubiner, Christy Weepy, and a handful of other colleagues. It was the first large-scale study to test PRT as a treatment for chronic back pain. So in this study, 151 individuals here were randomly assigned to one of these three groups. You can see 50 in the PRT group, 51 in the open label placebo, and 50 usual care. 9 sessions of PRT were applied over 4 weeks. An open label placebo injection, meaning they knew it was saline, and then the usual care where they continued whatever they were already doing. In the PRT group, 66% of the participants were pain-free or nearly pain-free post-treatment, compared with 20% in the placebo group and 10% in the usual care group. So this work is evidence-based and brain-based. We're not just telling people that their pain is in their head. We're helping them understand that the brain creates pain, even when you break your ankle. And that brain can also unlearn it. Right? So if you were to break your ankle, the sensations that you're getting are coming from your brain due to this real injury. But let's say if you were having ongoing sensation after the course of recovery, you've seen your doctor, gotten follow-up that you needed, and you were told, oh, things look okay. Or, like maybe there is some inflammation causing pain, or maybe it leads to a rabbit hole of other things that you start pursuing. What we're trying to do is give something to say, hey, we have met our recovery period. After that, we can start looking at these signals being basically one great big habit of the brain. So here are some of the 5 core elements of PRT. And this is the way that I kind of like to simplify them, is educate, build evidence, safety-oriented perspective, address emotional hurdles, and cultivate positive emotions and sensations. I find myself going to psychoeducation with clients most of the time. I mean, obviously, these other things are wonderful. Having your own personalized proof that the brain is involved, right? Number 3 addresses our main practice, somatic tracking, approaching sensations from a safety-oriented perspective, and addressing what could be contributing in our lives emotionally to why we're stuck in this cycle and leaning towards positive emotions. But we can't do any of those things without the psychoeducation about where pain comes from in the first place. We need that information to support every single core element from here on. Okay, now we're going to nerd out a little bit because this is my favorite topic. I like to talk about predictive coding because it's such a huge component of why this all even happens. Again, psychoeducation is key. So one of the most useful concepts in this work is predictive coding. The brain is not passively receiving information from the body and the world. It is constantly making predictions. It uses past experiences, learned associations, expectations, fears, beliefs, attention, and context to decide what sensations mean. So this matters because body sensations are especially vulnerable to misinterpretation. Once the brain begins predicting danger, in response to certain movements, sensations, body parts, context, or internal states, those sensations can become easier to generate and harder to interpret accurately. This is one reason symptoms can persist even when someone is desperately trying to get better. The brain is no longer just responding to the body, it is anticipating, bracing, protecting, and predicting. So here's a little visual for you all. This graph represents the predictive coding model of pain. So on the left here in blue, we have the bottom up nociceptive signal. This is your body sending information to your brain like temperature, pressure, tight pants, tension, all the raw data. And then on the right over here in the yellow, we have the top down prediction. This is your brain's expectation of what's about to happen based on memory, emotion, and context. The green curve in the middle, pain perception, is the brain's best guess about danger, combining these two inputs. In a healthy system, as you see here, there's balance. Your brain uses sensory input and prior experience to make an accurate, efficient prediction, like touching a hot stove and immediately pulling away. Right? But in chronic pain, that yellow curve here, the prediction of danger starts to dominate and it gets much bigger. The brain no longer waits for strong sensory input. It predicts pain before it happens. The result is real pain, but pain that originates in an overprotective prediction loop. Think of it like a smoke alarm that goes off when you make toast. There's no fire, but the system has learned to react to even a hint of threat. What we're doing in PRT is not ignoring pain. We're updating the brain's predictions by teaching safety. Through curiosity, relaxation, and emotion work, we show the brain, you can turn the volume down. You're safe now. So I have a fun story about this. My co-author of the Pain Reprocessing Therapy Workbook, she lives in Juneau, Alaska, and she lives in a pretty rural part, not anything that us, kind of whiny Californians are used to, because we have 75 degrees year round. But she basically lives in a part where, in Alaska, in her region, when the night comes in, it's like can be dark in one side of town and light in another. It doesn't kind of trickle in through the sky. And she was finishing work and walking home and decided to go on a walk because she had a stressful day. And she was walking down a hiking path and she all of a sudden sees an avalanche warning sign on the right of her. She's like, oh, like I have to walk slow and steady, but I also kind of have to pick up the pace because the night is coming in behind her. And then all of a sudden up ahead, she sees movement and she pauses and she realizes, oh my gosh, there's a wolf up there. Where there's one wolf, there's more. And she starts panicking. She's like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Where do I go? And probably within just a couple of seconds that felt like a lifetime, she starts to realize that there's more movement that she's not able to understand through her fear lens quite yet. And then shortly after, she realizes it's not a wolf, it's a dog, because there's a person and they have a leash on it. And her brain made this prediction because she was in this like, I got to hurry up, I got to go, but I also have to be careful mode. And there's no way out of here except forward. And she would always tell this story and I loved it. And I thought I didn't have a cool one, as if my brain doesn't have a million examples of predictive coding. But one time I was in a meeting with my admin assistant recently, probably about 6 months ago or more. And my admin assistant, Cindy, was telling me, oh my gosh, did you hear the earthquake last night? Or did you feel the earthquake? And I hate earthquakes so much. Like this is a sure way to make me cry. I just, the ground is moving. Things are not okay. I hate them so much. And she starts telling me this. I'm kind of being dramatic in our meeting. I'm like, oh my God, just stop telling me. And she's telling me it wasn't too big. It was kind of light. And I looked it up and sure enough, there were little earthquakes, even though that's a good thing. You want that. You need the earth to move a little bit because I guess apparently when there's no movement, it's a bad thing, which I could care less. But anyways, she starts telling me about this. And then we got to our meeting and then I moved on from it. And I'm in a session a few hours later and I'm talking to a client about predictive coding. I kid you not. And I'm telling my client all of these cool things to kind of like think about. And my client's having all of these aha moments. And then all of a sudden, my desk starts shaking and my computer starts shaking and the light above my computer starts shaking. And at first I genuinely thought that I was just getting dizzy. But then when I realized everything was shaking, my client is just talking about, wow, like this makes so much sense. And I had to mute myself. And I was like, I'm about to hang up on this person. I need to get under my desk. I need to get as far away from anything that could hurt me as possible. And this all happened within about 10 seconds or less. My body temperature is up. I'm shaking. My eyes are starting to tear up. But I live in a beach bungalow that is slightly raised. And since my home is raised, when my washing machine goes on a spin cycle, it shakes my whole freaking house. And so I thought it was an earthquake, but I forgot that I put in a load of laundry before I started my session, and my laundry room is on the other side of my office wall. So it was just the spin cycle that freaked me out. So what I want to point out here is there's so many types of kind of like generic, simple, predictions that our brain makes. Hearing your phone vibrate when it didn't, thinking someone said your name in a loud room, expecting a step that is not there and feeling your body react, mistaking a shadow for a person. The brain guesses really fast, right? Guessing what it sees in an optical illusion, tasting something differently when told it is expensive. I do that all the time with wine, that you can get me with that. If you tell me that this is an expensive bottle, I'm like, wow, it tastes expensive. Expecting a text from someone and reading tone into a neutral message. The body bracing before a bang goes off, right? Or getting your blood drawn, right? When the brain predicts, the body can learn pain during a stressful chapter and then reoccurring in similar contexts. So this is a fun one that I really love to go into, letting your sense of touch do the thinking. So this phrase actually comes from the workbook, and it's one of my favorite bridges in this work. When people are distressed, they often are not directly sensing the body. They are analyzing it, predicting it, scanning it, judging it, or trying to get ahead of it. So one of the shifts in PRT is moving from analysis to observation, from storyline to sensation, from fear-based interpretation to direct contact. Let your sense of touch do the thinking helps people soften the overthinking and come into more direct, grounded contact with what is actually happening in the body. So what I'll have a client do is grab a solid object in front of them that is small that they can hold in their hands. And I will have them toss this around a little bit. I'm like, letting the tips of your fingers do the thinking for you. I want you to give me 3 words that you would use to describe what you're touching. And you guys are all welcome to do this now. And you might use words like plastic, like hard, cold. And this happens a lot where somebody says these kinds of words. And now what I would tell a client is that's so fantastic because you just proved your brain's predictive coding. Your fingertips don't know what plastic is. That's your brain making a prediction about what you're touching. What you're touching right now is cold temporarily, but I want you to hold it a little bit longer and squeeze your hands around it and notice the temperature changing and tell me what you feel. And I will do this with clients to get them to start seeing like, yeah, I don't know how to describe it with the tips of my fingers. It's really hard. And I'll say, yes, that's the whole point, because you're using your brain's predictive coding to try to constantly assess what you're experiencing. And what we're trying to do is use exercises like somatic tracking to almost like, I mean, it may sound kind of gross, but like getting into your body as if you could touch pelvic floor pain or touch that heavy sensation in your chest with your fingertips. And I want you to try to describe what you're feeling. And it's going to be hard. And that's the point. If you look up online, there are some really funny videos that kids have filmed their parents putting their hand through a closed side of a box. They like cut a hole in the bottom of the box and the open side of the box is towards the kids, and they're filming their parents. And they'll put something like a Kleenex in there and they'll say, okay, put your hand through and touch around. And the parent will touch around. And as soon as they sense something fuzzy and moving, they freak out because they can't see it. Predictive coding with pain is like your brain making a constant predictive mistake. That's what chronic pain or chronic sensations are, a predictive mistake that your brain is constantly making, right? A chronic mistake, right? Not chronic pain, not chronic sensations, a chronic mistake that your brain is making, right? So you'll see these funny videos of these parents like overreacting, and it's so funny because they really think every time like, okay, I can't see, my kid is filming me, they're probably messing with me, it's probably a spider or a rodent or something, and it's always something small and mundane. Letting your sense of touch do the thinking is a really important way to start figuring out how to describe our sensations in a new way. So amplification, when the alarm gets louder, amplification is overprotection. Right? It's a normal protective process gone rogue. It's why even small sensations can feel huge when the brain is on alert. So amplification is so important because many people assume stronger symptoms always means worsening damage. Sometimes symptoms are louder because the system is louder. Fear, uncertainty, vigilance, repeated monitoring, stress, medical trauma can all heighten the alarm response. That can make symptoms feel more intense, more global, more unpredictable, and more discouraging. This does not mean nothing is happening. It means the protective system is contributing in a major way. It means your system is doing its job too well. And just a little visual for you here. On the left, you have the ear that is already experiencing a scary diagnosis, uncertainty, fear-based messaging, a lack of safety. The amplification is when we go from before pain to now having pain. And so having that is like putting a hearing aid on and everything is coming in even louder. Now, when the pain is here, everything is so much louder. And as you notice, not only do things amplify, but then we have new stuff: insomnia, fatigue, panic, and so many other things. So it's not just the pain, it's also the distress around the pain. This is a crucial point. It's not just the sensation itself that matters, it is also the distress attached to it. Two people can have a similar sensation and have very different nervous system responses. One may stay fairly grounded, another may tense, panic, brace, shut down, or spiral. So in this work, we're not only asking, are you in pain? We are also asking, what happens when you notice it? How much urgency is there? How much fear? How much bracing? How much helplessness? That distress becomes part of the learning. And recovery includes changing the emotional meaning of that sensation. Somatic tracking is the core practice of pain reprocessing therapy. It's the heart of the work that we do. It's not just tracking pain intensity, it is also noticing your response to the sensation. Do I tense? Do I panic? Do I brace? Do I rush to fix it? Do I get frustrated? Do I shut down? Then we begin approaching both the sensation and the distress with more safety and curiosity. The goal is not to force relief. The goal is to send the brain new information and change the relationship with the sensation over time. Observe, reassure, redirect. And the road to recovery is a non-linear one. I have some people that say that this graphic pisses them off. And I'm like, I know, because it's true. The reality is that like recovery is so non-linear. I know when you're on one of these down days here, it might feel like you're way back at square one. You're not. You're just having a really, really down day. A day that feels like terrifyingly close to being as low as before, right? Down day, down weeks, right? There's also no time limit in which we stay down here. Because I say to people like a down day, and they're like, well, I've been having a down day for a year. Like, okay, but that still doesn't mean that somehow you've gone backwards. We're just having our run around with our symptoms right now because we feel stuck. So the road to recovery is nonlinear. And what I do want to emphasize in only one slide, which is always sad to me, but I just have to bring it in at least somewhat. For marginalized groups, the body may have never had consistent access to safety. So cultural mistrust, microaggressions, or systemic barriers can maintain a baseline of threat. We're not just teaching safety here, we're acknowledging that safety must first be earned, right? We first have to learn this safety. And a lot of the times, the world around us is not set up for many of us to feel safe. And we have to acknowledge that in order to really work towards our recovery. Again, marginalized individuals, people of color, LGBTQ, women, varying cultures, especially where you live, right? Safety isn't always equal to everyone. And this is just some fun stuff that I really like to make sure to include. These are all different messages that I've received from clients. I had a client send this to me who went on a retreat and was asked to think of a healer in their life. And they sent me this photo that they drew of my hair, which like caught my attention, and just a few other messages. This is a message that I send to my clients. I'm not as fragile as I fear I am. This client here hadn't left their house in about 6 years. And then I randomly got a message that they went to a hockey game. Did not see that coming. This person sent me all the medications that they used to take that they were throwing out at their own desire and with their doctor's approval. A lot of different messages here. Somebody over here who recovered from our work and just wanted to reach out and let me know how they were doing and that they've returned to their life. And if you notice, they say, every single time it looks like it's even hurting, though, I am able to use the techniques you gave me and change my thought patterns and make the pain go away like magic. It's not magic, but I appreciate the the anecdote there from them. And so here's a little information. Here's what the workbook looks like. You can pretty much buy it anywhere that sells books. It's in Amazon in pretty much every country. You can also go to the publisher's website, New Harbinger. I think it's just newharbinger.com. We have a bunch of translations in the process. We currently have the Japanese workbook almost finished to be published in Japan. And that is my therapy Instagram that you're more than welcome to follow. So I'll leave it here for just a few more seconds before I make a few announcements here at the end. Okay, this is another chapter that I contributed. This is another project that I contributed a chapter to. This came out late last year, so very recent. And this is the chapter that I wrote. And this journal is great. There's an article. There's a chapter from Howard Schubiner and a lot of other providers. What I learned recently is that you can go by each an individual chapter because the larger book is quite a larger cost. But if you wanted this specific chapter, you can look up this journal and purchase this specific chapter or any other individual chapters that you want. You don't have to purchase the whole thing. So that was a really wonderful project. It's something very near and dear to my heart, where I emphasize the importance of saying a woman experiencing a migraine instead of saying she has migraines, just changing some language for empowerment. And then what I really want to show you all is that we do have something very exciting coming. And I will show you the website now. We have a few members here as well, actually. So we do have, I will be starting a pain psychology center that is based in the UK. And this is our landing page. I'll be happy to put it in the chat for you all, or if Rob is still here, if Rob, you can do that and put it in the chat for everyone. Rob will be running our operation, so you might see him here. You may also see a few other members in our group here today. So this is just our page, our main website that we're still working on, but I just want to give everyone a preview of what it's going to look like. Very simple, very clean, hoping that it feels even soothing to kind of join the website and our techniques, our effectiveness, and our team. I believe we do have Miss Davies here. And we also have another Alex McQueen who will be on our intake team and a provider as well. So we should have a few of those folks here today. But I'm really excited about this. This is something I've been wanting to do for a while. So I'm just really looking forward to launching this officially. So let me come back and wrap up here. Another event that I just wanted to kind of let you all know, I think Marion is still here. I will be joining okay, I'm gonna get it right. I will be joining Stichting Emovere, which means moving emotions through or moving through emotions. They are a nonprofit based in the Netherlands, and I will be joining them in June for a little guest spot at their event there, and a future date too that will be announced that I will be posting on socials as well. But this is my tribal seal. I am a member of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. Thank you all so much. And I will stop here for questions from here on out.